This is the Reviewing Network Live, a weekly stream of consciousness recording session where I sit back with you folks out there, talk about some of the big news stories from the past week, and some other things I found that might be of amusement to you out there. I think you might get a kick out of it. Now, these are more like audio podcasts and are much longer than my usual videos and are also for the most part unedited and will contain some foul language. So, if you're easily offended by that, I advise you to maybe step back a bit, maybe go somewhere else. But hey, if you're up to the challenge, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Thanks. And for the 33rd time ever, we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Reviewing Network Live. It's Sunday night. The week is over. We're getting ready to the start of the launch of the new week. Some stories of interest in the movie world to talk about. Not only that, but I found some things of noteworthiness to talk about after that. We got a packed show for you. Unlike last week, which could have been a packed show if I didn't have to do Steel City Con, but I truncated that episode down to the box office and then the brief review of Woody Woodpecker Goes to Camp. But we've got a full slate of stuff to talk about this week, and it starts off, of course, with the weekend box office. So, let's go ahead and jump on into it. Let's begin the conversation. A lot of new this week in the top 5. 3 of the 5 movies are new releases. I only knew about one of those new releases in particular. It was one I was really looking forward to check out. But let's get to the other 2 new releases. We'll start off with the number 5 film this week, which I actually did see the trailer for this when Ghostbusters Frozen Empire came out. It was like one of the last trailers they had. Like, Sony really believed in this to put that as one of the last trailers before we got to the movie. And that was, of course, Spy X Family Code White, which is another one of those Crunchyroll big screen releases. Dragon Ball has had a couple of these. The plot synopsis of this is that after receiving an order to be replaced in Operation Strix, Roy decides to help Anya win a cooking competition at Eden Academy by making the director's favorite meal in order to prevent his replacement. I know nothing about the Spy X Family Code animes. I know nothing about these characters in particular, and can't really say anything about this movie because I did not go and see it. $4.9 million, which is not that great in particular, especially when you consider what Dragon Ball Broly did a couple years ago when it was actually the number 1 movie at the box office and made like $10 million without really much of a marketing push to it. So, yeah, I really don't know how good of a success this actually is for this film in particular, so can't really delve into that much more with that one. But let's get to the number 4 film, which is another new release this week, and that is The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which is the latest Guy Ritchie film. Let me see if I can find some information on this one, because I really don't know too much about this one either. I knew about it, I just don't know what the plot of it is. Essentially, the plot is that the British military recruits a small group of highly skilled soldiers to strike against German forces behind enemy lines during World War II. And this is a cast that includes Henry Cavill, Isa Gonzalez, Alan Ritchson, Henry Golding, Alex Pettyfer. Let's see who else is in here. Carrie Elways, Till Schreiber, Rory Kinnear, and that's pretty much everybody I know in this movie. I see the budget here, and $9 million is not the best start for this. $9 million. $60 million budgeted film. Now, I don't know how Lionsgate handles this, how much of this money do they put into it, or did they put all the money into this, but if they put all the money into this, this is not a good start for this movie. $9 million is not a good start for a $60 million film. Even if it got a highly praised movie, that's still not a good sign for it. It did get a good cinema score, and it has good reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. 73% out of 102 critics are positive on it. 6.3 out of 10, which is not the worst, but certainly not great either. So the word of mouth on this is probably not going to be that solid overall on this particular film. So, but I mean, Guy Ritchie's movies the last couple of times around have been films that kind of come out but don't really leave much of a lasting impact on you. Like, honestly, since Aladdin came out, it's like he took that money he got from Disney and just said, I'm just going to make these different types of movies. I don't care if they're going to be successful or not. I'm going to make the movies that I want to make. And so he follows it up with The Gentleman and Wrath of Man and Operation Fortune and Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, which came out last year. And and to be perfectly honest with you, I've never seen any of those movies after Aladdin. Like, I haven't seen any of them to really get a grasp on whether or not these movies are actually good. And I'm actually reading about this particular film. This was originally set up at Paramount Pictures, who actually acquired the rights to the book by Damian Lewis, and it's not it's not the Damian Lewis from Billions. It's a different Damian Lewis. And supposedly what happened was that the film was acquired by Lionsgate after filming began. I think the day after the day filming began, Lionsgate picked it up, and essentially it was sold over to them, as well as the international distribution rights to Amazon Prime Video. I'm just getting this information off Wikipedia. I really don't know in particular a lot about this particular movie in general, but like I said, $60 million for a film like this. The box office only being $9 million. That is not a good start to this film by any means necessary, and yeah, maybe if Paramount was behind this probably would have been more successful. I'm just saying, but again, I don't know the details on how that transfer really took shape with this film, but that's all I know about this one, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Let's go ahead and move on to the number 3 film, which was number 2 last week, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, which brought in $9.5 million, dropping about 39% from last week. $171.6 million, just crossed the 200. It's closing in on the $500 million worldwide mark. It's at 485.2 as of right now, and I'm not sure how much longer it's going to take, but it's going to be right there at $500 million pretty soon. Not much more to say about that one. We've talked about that one in length. So let's go ahead and move on to the number 2 movie, which is the biggest new release of the whole weekend, and that is, of course, Abigail, the new film from Radio Silence about kidnapping Dracula's daughter, which is literally what the movie is about. I mean, it's about these people who were basically they're going to be given $50 million to watch over this kid that these mobsters just kidnapped, not realizing that the kid they kidnapped is actually the daughter of Dracula, and of course, she breaks loose, and all hell breaks loose as well. We see a lot of positive reviews from critics. 83% got a cinema score of B overall. The box office on this is $10.2 million, which is kind of around the same area that Monkey Man was a couple weeks ago. But that movie has dropped down to number 9 this week, bringing in $21.6 million. But that movie already kind of made its budget back overall. Abigail is at $28 million with the budget, which is... it's tough to call this one. I mean, this is a film that probably could make that money back easily. It's not that hard to make up another $18 million, especially when you consider worldwide grosses. If you include worldwide grosses this week, it's up to $15.2 million, which is not bad per se, but I don't know. It feels like a film that probably should have made a lot more money, but I really think it should have made a lot more money because the movie was actually really, really good. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. It's a really good film. I mean, these are the guys that made Ready or Not. They also did the most recent Scream films. They're pretty good at knowing what they're doing when it comes to horror. In fact, I said it before in my review for this. We're in a good run with horror films right now. We've had a lot of really good ones. The Last Voyage of the Demeter was really good. First Omen got a lot of good positive word of mouth. Late Night with the Devil is great. I mean, we're probably heading into a really good horror renaissance right now if we can keep this up, because it's clear that the people that are making these movies now know what they're doing when it comes to horror films, and this is another example of it. People actually came to see this, and I was actually kind of surprised that Universal's been on this vampire streak in the last year or so. We talked about it in the review with Renfield coming out around the same time last year. Last Voyage of the Demeter was August, and now we have this movie here, and this is the one that did the best out of all 3 of them, which probably means that the word of mouth by Radio Silence is good enough for people to come see their movies, even though they aren't really the top name draws as of right now. But they see the cast in there, they see the directing team involved in it. People will go and see their films, and there you go. Almost was the number 1 movie this week. Speaking of the number 1 movie, let's go to the number 1 film this week, and for the second week in a row, it is Civil War, A24's first number 1 movie, and the first movie to have two weekends at number 1. $11.1 million, dropped off 56% from last week, bringing its gross up to $44.8 million. Worldwide, it's closing in on $50 million. The budget on this, I can't remember what it was. I'm going to check right now. It's at $50 million, so it's going to make its money back no matter what at this point. It's all profit from here on out. Finally got to see it this weekend, and it was really good. It's probably a contender for one of the best movies of the year. It's a film that I really gave a lot of praise for not just for the action, for the great performances, but I like that it's a thinking man's movie. It's not picking a specific side in general to get behind. It's basically letting you, the viewer, decide which side do you think is the right way to go. And I love that about that movie. I love that it's able to play with your expectations there a bit and make you think about it after you're coming out of the movie. And I really appreciate that with the film. Probably going to be the last weekend it'll have here, because next weekend we have Challengers coming out, which should be the number one movie. The word of mouth on it is very good right now. It's getting a lot of positive critical praise. Heavy Oscar front-running consideration for Zendaya, so that's definitely a possibility to be the number one film. We also have Boy Kills World, which I'm just seeing the previews for it now. If you watch FXX and FX shows, you'll see you'll see the commercials for that all over the place. So they were really pulling for that movie to do some decent business. I mean, it's got H.on Benjamin in it too, doing the voiceover for the lead guy here. So I'm kind of convinced. We also have Unsung Hero, which I don't know too much about, but I think it's a faith-based movie. So it depends on who's putting it out, because it'll probably do well. And then we have Cinderella's Revenge, from the same people who brought us the classic that is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Classic in quotation marks, I should say. But also Aliens coming out in theaters this week too. The original Aliens is coming back into theaters again this week, so be interesting to see that on the big screen if it actually does play around here. But my top priority next week in terms of new releases will indeed be Challengers, so definitely looking forward to checking that out. And that's the weekend box office for you, so let's go ahead and dive into some news stories for the week. So the news stories of the week begin with one that came out on Monday about the status of who is voicing Shadow the Hedgehog in the upcoming Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Now, if you remember from the end of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Shadow was introduced in a mid-credits sequence that he was indeed going to be in the next movie, and there was a lot of speculation of who was going to play that role. Some people thought it was going to be Jared Leto. Somebody thought that they were going to take from the characters from the video game, the voice actor from the video game, just like they did with Tails, where they got Colin O'Shaughnessy to play Tails. But this week we found out who exactly that person was going to be, and to me, I think this is kind of perfect casting. They've got Keanu Reeves, who's going to be playing the voice of Shadow. I've got the story here from the Hollywood Reporter. This is from Monday, of course. Keanu Reeves is speeding along to another franchise, with the John Wick star heading to Sonic the Hedgehog 3. He will be voicing the popular character named Shadow, multiple sources tell the Hollywood Reporter. The news comes off the heels of a jam-packed CinemaCon presentation from Paramount last week, where the studio debuted the first footage from Sonic 3, which includes the revelation that Dr. Robotnik, once again played by Jim Carrey, was depressed and out of shape after the events of Sonic 2, but gets his groove back thanks to creating Shadow. A character first introduced in the video game is in 2001's Sonic Adventure 2. The character is in as many ways the anti-Sonic, dark and edgy, while mirroring the hero's powers. Reeves has been in blockbuster mode for the past several years now, last starring in John Wick Chapter 4, before that reprising his iconic role of Neo in The Matrix Resurrections. Coming up, he has roles in Aziz Ansari's Good Fortune, in which he plays a guardian angel, and has a small part as the popular assassin in John Wick Presents Ballerina, a spin-off starring Ana de Armas. Now, this is why I think this is such perfect casting, because, Idris Elba played Knuckles in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Such a great casting call. Like, the great thing about these Sonic the Hedgehog movies is that they cast people who know, they get people who know the source material. They know how these characters should act, and the great thing about these movies is that, yeah, the stories and the settings may not be what everybody expects it to be. Like we don't have the stories from the original movies or the original TV show where it's Sonic versus Dr. Robotnik in the world of Green Hill Zone, or the places we saw at the beginning of the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Yeah, it takes place on Earth. It's kind of a fish out of water storyline, but at the same time, though, it's still the characters we've come to know and love, and they've got great people to play these characters. I mean, Ben Schwartz has made Sonic the Hedgehog his very own with those movies, and like I said, the addition of adding Colin O'Shaughnessy as Tails works so well to the film's advantage, as well as having Idris Elba in there playing Knuckles, who's kind of the Drax of the entire series. I mean, he's even getting his own spin-off series, which premieres this week, which still looks like a ton of fun. I can't wait to check that out. Knuckles comes out on April 26th. That's something I'm definitely very curious to see how that pans out. And, these movies have been a ton of fun. Would it be nice to be in the video game world of Sonic the Hedgehog? Yeah, I mean, it's not something I'd be completely against the idea of, but you know what? The people who are making these movies know what they're doing, and they're knowing what it takes to make these movies very entertaining, and feel because they know the source material, they know where to get the inspirations from. They're not just throwing in the references, and they're just like in the most obscure video game movies. Like we're not getting another Super Mario Brothers '93, or a movie like the recent Mortal Kombat movie, which you would think would be moving in the right direction with the way the video game movies have been going, but that film was just not as good as everyone made it out as was supposedly set to be. And you know, Sonic the Hedgehog, these Sonic the Hedgehog movies have been very, very good. I mean, like, let's explore the world. Let's bring more of these characters in here. And I'm really excited to see Keanu Reeves and see what he can do with this. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they play this whole thing out. And you know, it's going to be cool to see them eventually bring in all these other characters from the video games. Like, the idea is that they're setting it up so, you know, everybody can come on in and everybody from the Sonic universe can come on in here and, you know, be added into this world, and we can expand this universe. And it's going to have Jim Carrey again. Like, the fact that Jim Carrey retires from acting and he's always more than willing to come back for these movies, like, it really tells you a lot about, you know, him coming back into here, hoping that this is going to be the one thing he keeps coming back for. And he seems like he's so invested in this role, and I like the natural progression of each movie. Like, he starts off as, you know, the Jim Carrey that we're used to seeing, and then the next movie he got the big mustache, and now this film he's going to be fat, just like we come to expect from Dr. Robotnik, and that's pretty awesome. Like, I really am very tempted to see what new elements they bring to the table here. It comes out this year too, Christmas. It comes out the week before Christmas, which coincidentally is when Disney is going to put out the long-awaited sequel to The Lion King, the 2019 movie. Then that is Mufasa the Lion King, which has Barry Jenkins behind it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. Does Disney jump first, or does Paramount decide to move this ahead of that movie? I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. If they open both movies on the same day, I'm going to be really curious to see how that pans out. Are they hoping for another, like, you know, Star Wars Jumanji type of thing where, hey, both movies can open up and make a ton of money? It'd be interesting to see how that pans out, but I'm really excited to see this. I know a lot of people were very lukewarm on the news that Keanu Reeves was going to play the role, which, I mean, I just think that's very good. That's good casting. I mean, honestly, you get a guy that everybody likes. He plays a character that I think he could easily fit into the role into. I think this could work out very well. The last two Sonic the Hedgehog movies were great films. Let's see how this works out. Can't wait to check this out at the end of the year. Hopefully, it's going to be very, very good, just like the other two movies. Let's expand on the world. Let's see what they can do here. I'm more than excited to check this one out. So, Keanu Reeves gets cast as Shadow the Hedgehog. So let's go ahead and move on to the next big story of the week. So here's one of the big shocking stories of the week, and that is the fact that Quentin Tarantino, you know, he's been talking about making this upcoming film of his 10th and final project, and that is the Movie Critic. Of course, the big story this week was that he decided to drop that movie. He's no longer working on that film, and I've got the story here from Deadline Hollywood that explains what eventually happened. It says, Quentin Tarantino's movies are always full of surprises, and here is one about the Movie Critic we did not expect. Deadline can reveal that Tarantino has dropped the film as his 10th and final project. He simply changed his mind, Deadline has been told. Tarantino was going to bring Brad Pitt as the principal star, which would have marked his third teaming after Inglourious Basterds and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There are rumors that many from the cast of his past films might take part, as Sony was preparing to make this film after doing such a superb job on the last one, which was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I didn't like that movie as much as everybody else did. I'm not going to say it's a bad movie, but it left me more than underwhelmed compared to what everyone else was saying about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. Word is that Tarantino had rewritten the script, which delayed the start of production, but this is his 10th and final film, and Tarantino simply decided the Movie Critic will not be it. This is the biggest surprise to Tarantino fans since years back when Deadline revealed he had shelved The Hateful Eight after he gave a small group of actors his script and one of them shared it with his rep. Soon it had been copied and the rough draft was shared all over town and online. Tarantino felt betrayed, but he eventually returned to the project after staging a reading for charity after drawing raves for it, which Hateful Eight actually turned out to be a really good movie in the end. As for the Movie Critic, originally planned to be his 10th and final film, Tarantino has simply had a change of heart, and Deadline hears he will not be moving forward with the project. Sources close to the director said he changed his mind and is going back to the drawing board to figure out what that final movie will be. He's talked about doing a lot of different movies. I think at one point he was attached to a Star Trek movie at one point, but that eventually didn't go anywhere. I'll get more into that in just a second. The Movie Critic project gained a lot of momentum after the SAG-AFTRA strike ended when Deadline broke that Pitt would be joining the film with the hope to start shooting in 2024. Tarantino opened up a bit to Deadline's Baz Bamigboye, Bamigboye, at Cannes in May when the filmmaker presided over a screening of Rolling Thunder. He said at the time his movie was set in California, the year of the film's release, which was 1977, and that is based on a guy who really lived, but was never really famous, and he used to write movie reviews for a porno rag. The inspiration goes back to a job Tarantino had as a teen, loading porno magazines into a vending machine and emptying quarters out of the cash dispenser. Which I didn't even think you could put magazines into a vending machine, but there you go. Maybe a newspaper stand, but porno magazines. All the other stuff was too skanky to read, but then there was this porno rag that had a really interesting movie page. There was one critic in particular Tarantino liked who wrote snarky and smart as the second-string critic. Like with Shelving The Hateful Eight, Tarantino has pivoted where he finds it necessary, a trait that has served him well in his career and is sure to help him on whatever he decides to do for his final film. Okay, the thing is that he's setting this up to be his last film in general, and I'm actually looking at a Wikipedia list of all of his unrealized projects. He had all these different movies that he really wanted to do. Let's see if I can go all the way down here to the most recent ones. So here's some of the stuff that here's some of the other things that he had been working on that never really went anywhere. There was supposed to be a novelization of True Romance that never really went anywhere. There was a book called The Films of Rick Dalton based off the character from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that never really came out. Actually, this is stuff that it looks like this is stuff that he's currently working on. But most notably, the Kill Bill Whole Bloody Affair, where both Kill Bill movies would be condensed into one movie, and he's been talking about doing this for a while now, and it's never been released. He's been talking about it ever since the first Kill Bill film came out, which I don't know if it's actually going to come out. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it's definitely something that feels like that's something that we may not see ever come out. Even though he keeps promising it, and even if it does come out, it probably feels like something that, if it does come out, it will be less than what we expect it to be because, we overhype stuff too much, and when it finally comes out and it doesn't live up to the expectations that we hope for, it's almost considered immediately a flop or a bomb. But I'm looking at some of these other things that he had interested in doing. Like he was originally going to do an episode of Justified City Primeval, but unfortunately he never got a chance to direct any episodes. He was developing a spaghetti western film called Snake Belly, and he stated that he was looking forward to shooting the project as the actors would speak different languages. The hero was set to be an American, a bad sheriff who was to be played by German. Mexican saloon girl was to be played by an Israelite. Mexican bandito was supposed to be played by an Italian. There was an untitled Cliff Booth project based off the character from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There was a spin-off movie, another spin-off movie with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Robert Rodriguez involved on the show Lancer that Rick Dalton from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was in. He was actually going to do an adaptation of First Blood, the Stallone movie that led us into Rambo, with Kurt Russell as the sheriff and Adam Driver as Rambo, which probably would have been very interesting. And now that he's not working on the Movie Critic anymore, that might be something he might be tempted to do. Going back to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, there was supposed to be a limited series of the show Bounty Law that never went anywhere. They talk about the Star Trek movie that he was going to do. He was actually in consideration to do it all the way back in 2017. He had actually put it together as late as 2021, and now, of course, we're getting a new Star Trek movie with the director of WandaVision working on it. He was going to do a Django Zora crossover with his character from Django Unchained, and had Gerard Carmichael to actually co-write a film adaptation of the crossover, which, as far as I know, has not gone anywhere. He wanted to do a sci-fi film. He wanted to do another Western following Django Unchained called Django in White Hell. There was a movie called Killer Crow, which was being seen as the final entry in a Django and Glorious Bastards trilogy, which would have had Brad Pitt involved again as Aldo Rain. He was going to do a children's film at one point. They was going to do a remake of Less Than Zero. He wanted to do a medieval film, a screwball comedy in the veins of Howard Hawks, a 1930s gangster film, a John Brown biopic, Berlin Game, Mexico Set, and London Match, based off of these books by Len Dayton about Bernard Sampson. A remake of Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. He was intended to, at one point, was going to do an adaptation of Sergeant Rock, the DC Comics character. He was going to do a Westworld remake with Arnold Schwarzenegger as the gunslinger. There was going to be a sequel to Grindhouse. He wanted to try to do a knockoff of 70s disaster movies like he did with Jackie Brown with Blaxploitation and Kill Bill with Kung Fu films. To be a parody of those disaster films. He was actually going to do Casino Royale at one point too. Right here it says Tarantino expressed interest in directing Casino Royale. However, Eon Productions had no interest in hiring Tarantino. He claims to have worked behind the scenes with the Fleming family and believed that was the reason why the filmmakers finally went ahead with Casino Royale. Tarantino also said that it would have been set in the 1960s and would have only made it if Pierce Brosnan returned as Bond. He was going to do a Kung Fu film, Kill Bill sequels and spin-offs that never went anywhere. 40 Lashes Less One was the Elmore Leonard book. He was going to do an adaptation of that. He was going to do an Iron Man movie at one point in the 90s, a Green Lantern film, Silver Surfer. Yeah, I'm looking at this. There's a lot of stuff that he was involved in at one point. Like, I'm looking at Luke Cage. He was attached to a Man from U.N.C.L.E. movie, which, let's be honest, would probably be a whole lot better than the one that we got in 2015. I mean, he's done it. He has a lot of projects here, and so the fact that he has to pick one of these movies to be his 10th and final film, like I'm saying, I don't know if he's going to actually do any of these, but some of these projects could be very interesting to do. But you're picking 10. You say this next film is going to be your last film in general, so I really don't know where he's going to go with that. I thought the Movie Critic was probably going to be his last best chance to say that this will indeed be the last movie to go off on. So I really don't know where he's going to go from there. Like, it'll be very interesting to see what he decides to do for that final bow out. But yeah, the big story this week was that his last movie will not be released, and it's a little disappointing to see. But you know, Quentin Tarantino's made a lot more good movies than bad movies, so let's see what he can do. Let's see what he can do. Take some time to figure out what your last movie's going to be, and go from there. So that's that story. Let's go ahead and move on to the next story that we have here. And I gotta say that it's getting pretty murky at Paramount Pictures. Of course, Paramount Pictures right now is currently looking for somebody to buy them. And you know, just when you thought that Warner Brothers possibly picking them up was the craziest bit you'd see from the situation here, Sony Pictures said, "Hold our beers because we're coming into the picture now." So this happened on Friday, I believe, or Thursday, actually. Thursday, Friday, it's pretty much the same thing, but this came out on Thursday. I'm looking at it on Variety right now. Sony Pictures Entertainment and Apollo Global Management are considering a possible joint bid for Paramount Global. News of the discussion was first reported by the New York Times. Sources close to the situation confirmed that conversations but cautioned that there are numerous obstacles that would need to be overcome before the sides could formally submit an offer. Apollo previously floated a $26 billion offer for Paramount by itself, and before that, it floated an $11 billion offer for the Paramount Pictures film studio on their own. At present, Paramount Global is in the midst of a 30-day negotiating window with Skydance Media. Skydance and Paramount are trying to work out a deal that would merge Paramount into Skydance and bring in a new management regime led by Skydance CEO David Ellison. Paramount Global has set up a special committee of board members to consider offers and options for Paramount. That committee is understood to have rebuffed Apollo's overtures out of concern that the private equity firm might have trouble completing the deal given the mood in Washington these days. There's also concern that a financial buyer like Apollo would be a less benevolent owner for challenging assets than a strategic buyer like Skydance with designs on growing the overall business. The concept fueling discussions between Sony and Apollo are that Sony Corp would contribute Sony Pictures Entertainment to the joint venture that would encompass Paramount Global. Sony and Apollo would both contribute cash to help finance the transaction that would take Paramount Global private. Sony would be the majority owner of the large entity that includes CBS. Sony and Apollo would have to come up with a structure for the deal for the 28 TV stations that CBS owns, given the FCC rules barring a foreign entity from having majority ownership control of broadcast TV stations. A representative for Apollo did not immediately respond to a request for comment. A Sony spokesman declined to comment. The plan under discussion now between Apollo and Sony would mark a significant transformation for Sony Corp, who had become a Hollywood presence for nearly 35 years after buying what was then Columbia Pictures in 1990 for $3.5 billion. Sony Corp has consistently denied years of persistent rumors that the company was ready to exit its Hollywood investment. In the Skydance scenario, Paramount Global would remain a publicly traded entity. Skydance and its private equity partner, Redbird Capital Partners, would give Paramount an influx of capital that would chip away at its considerable $14.5 billion debt loan. The Skydance transaction would also come with regime changes, as Ellison would serve as the CEO of the enlarged company. Jeff Shell, the former NBC Universal CEO, would now steer Redbird alongside former and managing partner Gary Cardinale, who would have a key role in a reconfigured Paramount Global. As the basic outline of the Skydance transaction has emerged, some shareholders have quick to voice concerns that controlling shareholders, Sherry Redstone, will be enriched in the deals at the expense of others. If the Skydance deals happen, Skydance and Redbird will replace Redstone as the controlling shareholders, with nearly 80% of voting control in the company, though preferred shares in about 10% of Paramount Global on an equity basis. It's understood that Skydance and Redbird are planning to do a roadshow to sell their deal to common shareholders if the sides can come to terms. The addition of Sony to the mix with Apollo may complicate the Skydance talks, even with the exclusive window in peace. So, kind of like what I said before, this is just a continuing carousel for Paramount, because we talked about how Warner Brothers was interested in picking up Paramount. That never went anywhere. Universal was at one point considered to be taking a jab at Paramount. That never went anywhere. At this point, Disney should just come in and say, hey, we're going to throw our hat into the ring, because it's getting to the point that they're gonna find a way to get in there, because it's just seeming like it's going to be going in that direction. I mean, every other major studio has come to them about a possible deal, and you think that's the next logical step. It's got to be Disney coming into here to try to decide to see what they can do here. I mean, even Byron Allen's tried to buy Paramount Pictures, and that also backfired big time. So really, the future of Paramount is very murky right now, even though they are having a very good time right now in terms of the box office in general. Like, the box office right now is really, really good. So overall, nobody really knows where Paramount's going to go within the next month or so, because, as it says in the article, they're in that 30-day period right now where they're about to talk to people about what the next direction is for them. Who is going to be the best person to eventually take over the company. It's really, for someone like me who has no real idea of how the business world works and how the strategies work and all that type of stuff, like, it's really hard for me to really come out and say, well, obviously you got to go to this person, or obviously you got to go to that person. Like everyone still has a problem with how Disney bought Fox, and how they thought that, how dare you ruin a major studio like 20th Century Fox? Look what you've done to them. And it's not been all that bad for Fox right now under Disney. I mean, Star Wars has been the best it's been under Disney. We've got this after a rocky start. The box office in general for Fox overall has been pretty good with the Avatar movies, and most recently, we had the first Omen, which did decent numbers at the box office, and their films are still very popular. The shows on Fox, like the properties, The Simpsons, Family Guy, Bob's Burgers. I mean, they're still lucrative properties for both Disney and Fox, and there is more of an emphasis on getting more titles out there from the Fox library out there. Like I just mentioned before, Alien is getting a re-release this weekend. Star Wars Episode 1 is getting a re-release next weekend in theaters. So it hasn't been all bad for Disney and Fox so far with the merger. Like, if anything, Warner Brothers and Discovery has been the absolute worst of the worst right now in terms of how you mismanage a company, and just like most of that's on the Discovery because, of course, David Zaslav, and unfortunately other studios are looking at this and they're not going, we're never going to do what this guy's doing. What the hell are you doing, man? It's just like, no, they're all going like, we see what you're doing here, and now we want to do the exact same thing. And it's just like no, that's not the way to go with this. So it's really, really hard to say how this is going to pan out. Like, if I'm being honest with you right now, I really do not know who's going to end up buying Paramount in the long run. Who's going to end up taking over that company when this whole thing is all over and done with. Like, if I had to pick right now, I'd say Skydance probably has the best chance of taking the company over because they've worked with Paramount over the years. They seem like they know what they're doing, and it's probably the best situation for them to have a studio like that small taking them over instead of like a global conglomerate like someone like a Sony or a Disney or a Warner Brothers or a Universal taking them over. But I'm not the one making the business decisions for Paramount. That's Sherry Redstone's job to decide who gets to take over her company, whatever money they're going to give them. So I don't know. It definitely can go either way, is any way possible. And if Sony took over Paramount, it'd be interesting to say the least. Like, if anything, I would say get Warner Brothers and Paramount. It's like if Warner Brothers and Paramount were to come together and you keep David Zaslav out of the picture, I probably would have been more optimistic about that. But the fact that he's still there, and it seems like he's not going to go anywhere until he really does something stupid. But even then, he's like every person that we hate that wants to go away. He's smart enough to know what to say and what to do as long as they keep making money for their specific companies. They're never going to get rid of them, no matter what we want them to do. And unfortunately, that's just the sad reality of it. So, really, I don't know where Paramount goes from here. A Sony Paramount collaboration might lead to some interesting things, but I'm not going to say it's the move I would go. I would honestly say, like, if I had to choose between some of the choices that they have right now, I'd probably say maybe Skydance is probably the best way to go with it right now. But again, we have to wait to see what happens as this gets closer. But bottom line, we should have an answer within the next month or so, it seems like, of who's going to end up buying Paramount in the end. So that was the interesting. That's probably the most interesting story this week, is that Sony wants to get on the Paramount bidding war. But I digress. Let's go ahead and move on to some stories of interest. We've kind of talked about the Peanuts specials in general. I mean, it's hard not to talk about the Peanuts specials because they've left such a lasting impact in the world of not just television, but animation in general. They're still specials that still hold up to this very day. We all still love watching the specials every year. And coincidentally, this week in particular was the 40th anniversary of one specific special that clearly was a special made to capitalize on what was popular at the time. And I'm, of course, talking about It's Flashbeagle, Charlie Brown. And just take a guess on what this special was actually capitalizing on at the time. I mean, just take a wild guess. And wild guess in particular. It was a particular movie released around this time period in the 1980s, movie about music and dancing and all that type of stuff. That great Paramount movie. Of course, talking about Footloose, of course. I mean, what other movie would I be thinking of? And obviously, you know which one I'm talking about. Flashdance. So it's Flashbeagle, Charlie Brown. It's the 27th Peanuts special that aired in primetime based off the characters from the comic strip, airing on CBS on April 16th, 1984. The special is presented as an original musical which features parodies of the early 1980s breakdancing craze. MTV was just coming onto the air. I think it was about 2 years into its run at the time. We also had references to Saturday Night Fever, the aforementioned Flashdance, and Footloose, a number of popular top 40 early songs from the early 1980s, and this thing has been released on DVD since then, so it is available on DVD as a bonus feature with the Snoopy's Reunion special from the 1990s. And in this, Snoopy assumes the alter ego of insanely hot and charismatic dance machine Flashbeagle. Meanwhile, Sally pines for Linus and Lucy bosses everyone around, so pretty much just a normal day in the Peanuts world. And I know what you're thinking. This is something that seems like it's doomed to fail right on arrival. But, truth be told, it's actually a really enjoyable special. Like most of these Peanuts specials are. I mean, there are some notable bad ones. And I've talked about some of them before on the website. But it has its detractors because of the premise and its over-the-top levels it takes. But at the same time, there is kind of that unique charm to it that the special has. I mean, yeah, it's clearly capitalizing on what was popular at the time. But it's got that unique charm to it. Seeing Snoopy dance the way he does in this, you can tell the animators and Charles Schultz decided to put a lot more effort into this than they usually would have done, because not only do you have Snoopy dancing, because that's what Snoopy does most of the time, but you go all the way out to get an actual stunt dancer from Flashdance to do the rotoscoping dancing on Charlie Brown. And you're really putting your all into this. I'm not even kidding. They actually got a stunt dancer from the movie Flashdance to basically come in and do the rotoscope Snoopy dancing. And if you watch the way Snoopy dances here, it's clearly much different than what we're used to seeing when it comes to Snoopy dancing around. Yeah, this is clearly not the way Snoopy usually dances when you see him dancing around in the Peanut specials. This is clearly something different compared to what you usually see from him. But not only that, man, the song that they use in this, the main song of the thing, Flashbeagle, it's one of the most catchy songs you'll ever hear. The voice work is done by Ed Bogus and Desiree Goyer, who the latter you may know as the voice of Nermal on Garfield and Friends, and they would both go on to work on many of the Garfield animated specials in the 1980s. The music overall is very well done, and when there's a part in the special where, Snoopy goes out to this nightclub, and it's one of the most unusual things ever, because not only do you see Snoopy dancing inside this nightclub, because it's not only him, it's him and Franklin there, but not only do you see these kids there at this nightclub, but you see all these different people who are clearly the top part of them are clearly the designs of the kids. Like I think from the hair down to the belly is the kids, and then all of a sudden they got these long legs like adults. Like, it's the first time we actually see adults in the Peanuts animated specials, and half the time they look like the kids, except the kids have just grown up, and they have these legs the kids look the same, except they have these long legs now. And I've got the scene where they're at the nightclub, and you can definitely see for yourself. So you see Franklin dancing, doing the breakdance thing. Because remember, this was 1984. This was around the same time they did Breaking 2, the Breaking movies. But so they decide to go into this club that literally is a disco. It literally says disco on the front of it. And if you look inside there, like, it's clearly, like I said before, the top designs are clearly what a normal kid in the Peanuts universe would be, and all of a sudden they got these adult legs on there. Like, they literally, it's like the animators just like took the half of the kid in the Peanuts universe and just decided to just draw adult legs on there, and just like, this is what adults look like in the Peanuts world, apparently. And it's like that for nearly every single adult you see in this. It's kind of lazy, but it's kind of hilarious at the same time too. But like I said before, this Flashbeagle song is such a banger, man. It is such a badass song. I mean, take a listen for yourself. And like they take the fireworks from A Boy Named Charlie Brown when they did the national anthem at the beginning and when they're in the baseball game. But like, that song should not be anywhere near as catchy or as good as this special makes it out to be. And it's just one of the most 80s songs you will ever hear, and one of the most badass 80s songs that you probably have never even heard of. I mean, it's just 80s gloriness at its maximum, and that's the regular version. And when they did this in the original broadcast version, they made it even more like an MTV music video, because I've actually got the video here. So in this original broadcast version of Flashbeagle, they decided to not only play the video like it is, but there's a point in the second half of the song where they decide to throw in these video effects that are kind of pointless, but MTV was doing it back then, so we gotta have it in here too. And like when they're doing the flash, 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 the screen, it just turns it. They just have the screens start showing various Snoopy dance moves, and it's just like it definitely feels like something out of an MTV music video around the time period. And I guess they throw that in there because this isn't dated enough on its own. I mean, it's dated very much, but there's clearly a lot more effort being put into this than there ever should be. And when you really boil down to it, this is probably one of the most overall fun, creative, and animated specials they've ever done. And that says a lot. I mean, because they tried to do something unique and different, and 9 times out of 10 it backfires. There was the Girl in the Red Truck special that they did because Who Framed Roger Rabbit was coming on. They wanted to put that out as quickly as they could. There was the big Snoopy doll special they did, and that didn't work out. But this is definitely one of those ones that's one of the more underrated Peanuts specials that needs to definitely be getting a rewatch, especially around this time since we're heading into the 40th since we just had the 40th anniversary of it. But I just thought that was kind of amusing that this week was the 40th anniversary of that. I wanted to bring that up because it is something special that you need to really, really, really need to see. It's Flashbeagle Charlie Brown. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the other story I wanted to cover here. So we are literally a few days away from the 2024 NFL Draft. It's the end of April, and that means, of course, the draft is coming up, which means that we always have to think about what our teams are going to be picking this year. And I don't want to give away some of the top predictions I have because I'm going to do a special NFL Draft edition of the Reviewing Network Live on Thursday night. It'll be after the draft. I'll be watching the draft as it happens. I'll have my first reactions to all the picks in particular. Needless to say, I think Caleb Williams is going to be the first overall selection for the Chicago Bears. I think Jaden Daniels will be the Commanders' second overall pick. But after that, all bets are off. I have some ideas of what could happen. Specifically, I kind of like to see the New York Giants move up to 3 to get somebody like J.J. McCarthy. They trade Daniel Jones away to the New England Patriots for that, and also the first round selection for next year. I don't know if they'd ever do that, but it just seems like something that somebody would do because I think the New York Giants are going to do whatever it takes to get J.J. McCarthy up there. I don't think and I feel like Drake May will probably be one of those prospects that everyone thinks that he's got a lot of upside and a lot of potential going in, but then he turns into another Zach Wilson or Trey Lance where everybody bets too highly on him, and when they expect him to perform, he's not ready because you throw him out in the open too quickly, and you don't have the right people there to get him going. But I don't want to go into too much of those details, but if you want to hear what I think the Steelers are probably going to do, I have 2 people that they probably should get. They probably won't get both of them, but if they did, that'd be like Christmas. That'd be like an early Christmas present for them. I think they're either going to get Amarius Mims from Georgia, the offensive tackle, or they're going to get Jackson Powers Johnson, the center from Oregon. I know they've been talking about maybe the Steelers trade up for Roma Duzier. Maybe maybe the Steelers trade down with somebody, but I don't think they're going to get a wide receiver early on. I think they'll save that for the 2nd or 3rd round. I think they'll probably draft one of those 4th round quarterbacks, 4th, 5th, 6th round quarterbacks down the road on Saturday. So it's not really. I don't think we're going to expect anything too significant from the Steelers in terms of like a massive, big splash move. Like, whoa, what are they doing? Why are they getting this guy? But I think it's going to be either Amarius Mims or Jackson Powers Johnson. I don't think they're going to get both of them. If they did, it'd be a Christmas miracle for them. But I'm bringing this up because, like I said, Thursday night there'll be a special show, a Reviewing Network Live, where I'll watch the draft, have my reactions to the picks that they have, the 32 picks that we there. But I wanted to talk about some of the more memorable draft moments in NFL history because there are a lot of funny NFL draft moments from people overhyping people that would obviously become failures in the long run. People who, situations where people are trolling people. It's like the fan bases are very upset with a lot of the decisions that the teams make, especially if you're a Jets and Raiders fan. But there are a lot of great memorable draft moments in particular that I wanted to bring up here. But I'll only bring up a couple of them because if we did, we'd probably be here all day long. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first one I wanted to cover. I think one of the earliest hilarious draft memories that I can think of was I actually just saw this today because NFL Network was running a draft marathon, and they were showing the 30 for 30 episode of Elway to Marino from the 1983 NFL draft, and they had the story about all the different quarterbacks that were in that particular draft class, and how Dan Marino slid all the way down for Miami to eventually get him. But when the New York Jets picked before them, there was the belief that the Jets thought they were going to get Dan Marino. And it led to Pete Rozelle when he made the pick. I mean, the guy was even laughing before he said the pick. Like, even he knew how bad of a pick this actually is. And I got the clip right here. Let's go ahead and take a listen to this. Like, even he's looking at this, is just like, really? 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 You picked him over? You picked this guy? And, like, I just love the way that he just trolls the New York fan base by doing this. Like, take a close listen to this, and you'll see what I mean. He's just like, gentlemen, please, I know this is what you've been waiting for. Like, he knows he's gonna fuck with them so badly. You heard someone just screaming out there, no! like he knew, like that guy knew what was coming next. That's like that moment there is just makes the clip all the more worth it when you hear what comes out next from Pete Rozelle's mouth.
First round selection, quarterback, Ken O'Brien of California Davis.
And the Jet fans are just like, oh my God, no, like he was right there for us. And sure enough, they took Ken O'Brien, and the Dolphins eventually got Dan Marino. Which, if you're a Steelers fan, that you know the torture that day when the Steelers basically told Dan Marino, like, we think you're going to be a great quarterback in the NFL, just not with us. We really do believe that Terry Bradshaw will be with us for the long run. We're going to take this guy, Gabe Rivera, which I don't remember, which I'm obviously too young to remember what Gabe Rivera did in the NFL, but I know that he had a great first year, and then in the second year, he unfortunately got into a bad car accident where he got paralyzed. It wasn't even at the end of the season. It was like right in the middle of the season, and he unfortunately passed away about 6 or so years ago. So, like I said, I don't really remember too much of him in the NFL, but what could have been, man? What could have been if the Steelers had gotten Dan Marino? But the Dolphins ended up getting him. But to Ken O'Brien's defense, whenever he played the Miami Dolphins, he usually beat the crap out of the Miami Dolphins. And it was like the Miami Dolphins, it looked like Ken O'Brien was peeved at the Miami Dolphins for not picking him and picking Dan Marino. It's just like, I'm going to make you regret ever picking Dan Marino. And sure enough, every time they played him, like he usually beat the crap out of them. The Jets usually won those games, and that's just like, there are so many memorable Jets draft moments and Raiders draft moments as well. But let's go ahead and continue on with some of the other moments I wanted to bring up. I'll bring this up too because unfortunately the man who made this moment that we're about to talk about passed away this week. Bill Tobin, who was formerly the general manager of the Indianapolis Colts, spent some time with the Cincinnati Bengals as of late, but back in 1994, which is coincidentally, this is going to happen 30 years ago this week. I can't remember what day in particular this happened, but on this particular day, the 94 NFL draft was going on. ESPN had it, and the Colts passed on Trent Dilfer and went for Trev Alberts. And this made Mel Kiper very upset. Mel Kiper, of course, being the head draft guy over on ESPN. And it led to one of the most memorable moments, if not the most memorable moments in NFL draft history, because Bill Tobin basically said what everybody else in the league at the time was saying the same thing. Like, who the hell is Mel Kiper? And I've got that clip right here. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
Not taking a quarterback here. Your response?
Well, we got a guy up there. Who in the hell is Mel Kiper, anyway? I mean, here's a guy that criticizes everybody, whoever they take. He's got the answers to who you should take and who you shouldn't take. In my knowledge of him, he's never ever put on a jockstrap. He's never been a...
You gotta love how they cut away to Mel Kiper just watching this and going like, okay, is this like, okay, what's this guy got to say about me? And I think everybody in the room was watching this too. And I think that's the funniest thing about it was that I guess back then they had ESPN's coverage on the televisions as well. So when he's done with this, you hear everybody just going like woo woo, like you're watching an episode of Maury Povich or around this time period, Married with Children. But let me continue on.
Coach, he's never been a scout, he's never been an administrator, and all of a sudden he's an expert. He's in our papers 2 days ago telling us who we have to take. We don't have to take anybody that Mel Kiper says we have to take. Mel Kiper has no more credentials to do what he's doing than my neighbor, and my neighbor's a postman, and he doesn't even have season tickets to the NFL.
I mean, first of all, give Chris Mortensen a lot of credit for his professionalism there. Just putting the microphone in his face, knowing that he doesn't know what's going to happen next with this guy. And it's just like, he looks like, if you watch closely, he's like moving the foot mic back and forth. Like he doesn't know what's going to happen next. But second of all, the fact that Bill Tobin not only said what every other general manager at the time was thinking, like, I just love the fact that he came out there and said, I don't give a shit what if I say something that's going to get people upset. I got to say what I got to say. And there you go. And like they talk about how every person in the NFL, all 28 teams, would have said the exact same thing too.
Bill Tobin was a hot-headed guy. I loved him. He said what the entire league thought. Who in the hell is Mel Kiper?
I know I and probably 27 other general managers congratulated him. It was classic.
Who in the hell is Mel Kiper?
Mel Kiper doesn't know any more than my postman. The thing is, nobody's ever really tracked down Tobin's mailman to find out exactly how much he does. I'd like to know.
What if it actually turns out this postman never really existed? Like he made this up right off the cuff after he heard that. He just said, you know what, I'm gonna say this. Like nobody's ever gonna figure out who my postman actually is. So screw it. I'm just gonna say it. But what I also really like about this is that Mel Kiper, you know, he could have easily said, "What the fuck does that guy think he is?" Like, not swear like that, but he could have gotten easily pissed off about that. But you know what? He played it professionally. As soon as the cameras came back to him, here's what he had to say.
He was realizing.
Mel Kiper? Well, Tobin obviously not going out to dinner tonight. Well, Chris, I tell you, I'm secure in my
Joe Theismann just using the papers to fan him.
Take exception to the comments. Bill Tobin was entitled to his opinion. He was critical of what I said. So be it. I wasn't there to shill for the NFL. I was there to give an opinion, and I've always done that.
To me, it's a mistake. You cannot go with Jim Harbaugh and pass up Trent Dilfer. Forget it. That's why the Colts are the laughing stock of the league year in and year out. April 24th, 1994. A day.
April 24th, 1994. So that'll be Wednesday. But you know, Mel Kiper wasn't wrong. Like everybody's entitled to their opinions, and you know he could think that hey, you know, the Colts can't go with Jim McMahon. They could have gotten Trent Dilfer, and hey, both of them ended up winning. Now Trent Dilfer actually did win a Super Bowl with Baltimore, but you know what? In the defense of the Colts made the AFC Championship game 2 years later with McMahon under center, and Marshall Faulk was their running back then. So, I mean, Bill Tobin knew what he was talking about. I mean, but like the fact that they had that was the big talking moment of that entire draft, to have Mel Kiper being blasted on national television like that. Like, it's the very definition of what that's the real reality TV. The moment that you don't expect to see coming a mile away. Not like this faux reality TV that we have nowadays. No, this is real life reality television where somebody basically says whatever they want to and doesn't care how it comes out. Nobody really knows what the hell to do next. That's the beauty of live television right there. That right there from the 94 draft is absolutely incredible stuff. Of course, there's a lot of other draft moments between 94 and what I'm about to cover next that I could bring up, like the whole thing about in 99 when Philadelphia basically said draft Ricky Williams or we're going to bury you at the stake. I mean, they literally told them to draft Ricky Williams, and if you draft Donovan McNabb, we're going to bury you alive. Like, people were not happy when they drafted Donovan McNabb, and he eventually went on to have the bigger successful career, and at least the Eagles didn't give up their entire draft class to go get Ricky Williams, like what Mike Ditka and the Saints did. Like, that's one of those moments where it's just like, what the hell were you thinking, Mike Ditka? Like, I know you have to create a spark for your team, but my God, to give up that much draft capital for Ricky Williams, I mean, you better be hoping that you're getting the best damn player in NFL history, and unfortunately they didn't do that, and that essentially cost Mike Ditka his job, and basically took him out of the head coaching position in the NFL for good. But the moment I want to bring up next was actually two moments that happened in both 2002 and 2003 when the Minnesota Vikings were on the clock and they passed on their picks. Not once, but twice. This is something that actually happened.
Well, guess what, Danny? If you walk by last stretch, there was 15 minutes on the clock. You couldn't get a pick in 15 minutes?
I think it deserves to be higher than number 5. That's never going to happen again in the history of the NFL. In fact, I could argue it's top 3.
Well, okay, technically in 2011 it actually happened with the Baltimore Ravens when they passed on pick number 26, and Kansas City actually ended up picking beforehand. But they eventually got the guy they eventually wanted. Again, I think it was Jimmy Smith was the guy that they wanted to get that year. But it did happen again. It happened about less than 10 years after this. But continuing on.
In 2002 and 2003, the Vikings organization stumbled on their first-round picks, causing a lot of people to scratch their heads.
I think people understand how many man-hours go into a draft. There's 10 to 12 scouts all year long, 14-hour days, 16 hours. Everything culminates in this one moment, and the Vikings blow it twice.
Welcome to the 2002 draft.
Here we go.
That year they wanted Ryan Sims.
You got Kansas City who wants to leapfrog Minnesota there and go up there to take Ryan Sims, a defensive tackle from North Carolina, because Minnesota's got their eyes on that guy.
When trade negotiations between the Chiefs and Cowboys ran long, the Vikings had a chance to leapfrog them, but Minnesota failed to turn their card in first.
Dallas has got to get this pick in. Minnesota can't jump in.
So think about this. You spent all these months drafting these people, doing mocks of how you think the draft is going to go, and you not only failed to do this once, but twice, and it ends up costing you in the long run. Like, you can understand maybe if there was, I don't know if there was a problem with the phones and all that. Like, I think that's what happened in 2011 with the Ray. I think there was a problem with their phones, the phone connection overall, and that's why the pick never came in on time. But in this scenario, it's just like there's no excuse for that. Like, they just completely did not have the time to put it together. Like, you spent all this time preparing for this, and this happens to you not once, but twice.
Vikings select Bryant McKinney, tackle from the University of Miami.
I saw the card that said Ryan Sims. If your folks tell your representatives here in New York to write down the name on the card and be ready in case time expires.
As soon as we knew time was getting close to expiring, we called in to our people, asked them to write down Ryan Sims.
Had anybody ever missed a first-round draft pick? I don't think it had ever happened before. Viking fans only had to wait another year to see it happen again.
So here they go. They're going to show what happened the year after that.
Well, Danny, the clock is winding down on the Vikings.
How is it possible that it could happen again?
In 2003, the clock ran out on the Vikings once again as they tried to complete a trade with the Ravens, causing television mayhem.
Vikings, taking turn to pick at any time.
That was so Vikings of the Vikings.
Again, same thing we had last year. You know what? Turn your pick in.
The fans were absolutely infuriated. Somebody picks ahead of us.
Jacksonville Jaguars select Byron Leftwich, quarterback from Marshall.
We were like 7, and then we were 8,
The Carolina Panthers select Jordan Gross.
and then we were...
So basically what happened was that because the Vikings were trying to get a trade done with Baltimore, they not only missed the pick that they had, 2 other teams drafted before them in a spot where they were supposed to draft up before those teams were supposed to draft. But then in the end, they eventually got a guy who actually did become a professional success for them, Kevin Williams. But the fact that they had that happen not once but twice in the course of the course of 2 years just basically goes to show you what the Minnesota Vikings were like between 2002 and 2003. And of course, everyone talks about, the battle between Phillip Rivers and Eli Manning in 2004. Eli Manning basically said, "I wasn't going to go play for the Chargers," but the Chargers drafted him anyway. And because he didn't want to do it, everyone got mad at him. And then the Giants made that trade, drafting Phillip Rivers. And then trading those picks away. So in the end, the Giants eventually got who they wanted, and the Chargers got who they eventually wanted. And in the end, it worked out for Eli Manning because he led his team to 2 Super Bowl championships and beat Tom Brady twice. So there was that. Those Jet draft moments are usually very, very funny. Them and the Raiders, but like someone put a compilation together many, many years ago where they talk about all the infamous Jets draft blunders, and it's really, really something hilarious to watch.
I think it's a good selection, but a very surprising one.
UCLA running back Freeman McNeil.
So Johnny Lee Jones, Freeman McNeil.
As a season ticket holder of the Jets, I'm going to boo.
Jets take the first round selection. Quarterback.
Ken O'Brien again.
Everybody said that Marino was going to be around at that time. They take Marino. Obviously, the Jets know something that, the people up there don't.
Yeah, they know that they're going to piss off their fans no matter what they do. And sure enough,
First round selection. Fullback. Roger Vick, Texas A&M.
they picked a fullback in the first round. A fullback.
New York Jets, first round choice. Jeff Lageman, linebacker, Virginia.
It's obvious to me right now that the Jets just don't understand what the draft's all about.
The New York Jets select Blair Thomas, running back, Penn State.
Blair Thomas from Penn State.
The New York Jets select Johnny Mitchell, tight end, Nebraska.
They're going to get this next one. This is the next best one coming up. They thought they were going to get Warren Sapp. Like, he was right there for the taking. And who did the Jets decide to take?
The New York Jets select tight end from Penn State, Kyle Brady.
Ladies and gentlemen, our first real upset.
Ah, the Jets completely getting screwed over by Brady once again. This time, not Tom Brady, but Kyle Brady. And that's just one video that was taken at the end of the 2005 draft. This thing continues on further.
Okay, Jet fans, with the fifth pick in the 2008 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Vernon Golston, defensive end, Ohio State.
Vernon Golston, of course.
The masses rejoice.
Follow that up.
He's about to get a return flight to New York in the former Jet intern.
1 year later.
Okay, Jet fans. Cleveland traded the fifth pick to the New York Jets. And with the fifth pick, the 2009 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Mark Sanchez, quarterback, USC.
I mean, again, to be fair to Mark Sanchez, he did get his team to 2 AFC championship games in a row in his first 2 years. Like, if his career decided to end right there, he probably wouldn't be a bust, but nope. Jet fans can't have anything good in their lives.
Alabama. In the 2013 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select D. Milner, defensive back, Alabama.
2013, of course, the worst NFL draft of recent memory. I mean, that one, I don't need to even tell you about how many buffs there were in that particular draft. But, continuing on.
Around his shoulders coming in. Essentially, Rich, New York traded Darrelle Reeves for D. Milner. Yeah.
They really traded away. They really gave Darrelle Reeves to New England to draft D. Milner. Good Lord. Good Lord.
With the 39th pick in the 2013 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Geno Smith, quarterback, West Virginia.
Yeah, that was when Geno was supposed to be the savior of the Jet franchise, but he's had a nice comeback in the last couple of years with Seattle, so he's not completely a bust, but especially considering the next person we have here coming up.
With the 51st pick in the 2016 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select quarterback Christian Hackenberg, Penn State.
Christian Hackenberg. And I love this kid who's just like, we got our QB, and barely made it onto the field. Like, I don't think he even played a full game as a Jet, if I'm not mistaken. If he did, it was like very, very, very sparsely played as a starter in the NFL. But Raiders fans, don't worry, you have a ton of draft busts as well. And one of the great things about the NFL draft now that's been part of the standard on NFL Network is that every single year they have the draft people there, and they always talk about like all these different people that they think are going to be the next big thing. Like, I love the different ways they go to different quarterbacks. Like, for example, the 2007 NFL draft had a couple of different notable names of people that they thought were going to be surefire stars in the NFL, and sure enough, they did not pan out that way, especially with the number 1 overall pick.
Okay, Raider fans, with the first pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the Oakland Raiders select quarterback Jamarcus Russell, LSU.
Now keep in mind, that was the first draft pick for Roger Goodell, who had taken over for Paul Tagliabue. He became the commissioner shortly after Tagliabue retired. The first overall selection that you picked, that you announced in the NFL draft, is Jamarcus Russell. What a way to start your commissionership. And trying to find the clip where they show the crazed Raider fan who thought that the Raiders had just struck the lottery by drafting Jamarcus Russell. Let me see if I can find him. All right, here we go. Take a listen to this.
Take your ankle.
Okay, there's so much there to discuss with. First of all, the guy didn't have his mask on the right way. Like, you could tell he didn't have it on the right way. 2, this motherfucker's drunk. He's gotta be drunk, because he's just doing nothing but saying, like, yeah, Raiders are the best. J-Rock is the best, man. Al Davis knows exactly what he's doing, man. Like, it's like, this guy's got to be drunk out of his mind. And if you're that, like, nothing about what he said made any sense whatsoever. Like, even a real Raiders fan would look at that guy and go, like, really, man? Like, I'm excited for Jamarcus Russell too, but not that exciting. And yeah, so, I mean, that is just, there's so much wrong with that in particular. And, there was another guy in the draft class that year, Brady Quinn, that everyone said that he was going to be the next Aaron Rodgers because he was supposed to be drafted high up in the draft, and nobody picked him until Cleveland decided to go get him. And sure enough, what happens later on in the draft, not quite as insane as this guy, but a Dolphins fan who the Dolphins clearly needed a quarterback around that time, he went on there and said the following.
The Miami Dolphins just passed up on drafting Brady Quinn from Notre Dame. Since Dan Marino retired, we haven't had a quarterback. 10 starters for the Miami Dolphins, and we pass up on him. He could bring football back to the Miami Dolphins, maybe even a championship this year, but we get 10 kids, 5'11", 170 pounds. What is he going to do? We don't have anyone to throw him the ball. These Dolphins better make up for him in the second round, because I'm disgraced. I'm ready to leave. I've been a fan since I was little, and this is like what I get.
I mean, that guy was probably drunk too, but I mean, he does make some legitimately good points, but at the same time, he was really thinking that Brady Quinn was going to lead them to a title, and yet a division title, and maybe even a Super Bowl. Like, I mean, look, I get that. I get like that sometimes. I mean, we all get like that sometimes when we're so deep into a sports franchise, and we see somebody that we think is going to be the guy that's going to eventually be the savior for the franchise. Like, I mean, I'll say it myself, Kenny Pickett, when he got drafted by the Steelers, I thought that was going to be the next great thing for them, but of course it didn't help that you had a guy that was clearly still having a job because he got his head coach's son into college. I mean, that's pretty much the reason why Matt Canada's still stuck around with the Steelers, but I was like that for Kenny Pickett, and then, of course, guess what happened? Now he's going to play backup for Philadelphia for the rest of his career. But at least I was more of an optimistic than this guy is. Like, the guy was going like he could have brought a championship back to Miami. It's just like, with who? Like, who else was there in Miami that you could have brought a championship to? You just fired Nick Saban after 2 years with the team, and then you're hiring this guy and Cam Clark, who had never had a coaching position. In fact, did he ever have a coaching position beforehand? Or maybe am I even getting the right guy here? I was close. Cam Cameron was the guy. He was the I think he was the Ravens he eventually became the Ravens offensive coordinator. He was originally the San Diego Chargers offensive coordinator, and I guess that's why they gave him the job. And yeah, like, that season alone, like, if Brady Quinn had made it into Miami, considering everything that was going on for the Miami Dolphins around that time, yeah, that probably would not have been too good for them in terms of, like, their success factor there. Like, that was something where it's just like, yeah, Brady Quinn should be lucky he went to Cleveland. Even though Cleveland was not that better, like, he at least had more success there than he probably would have had in Miami had he gone there. But that's always the fun of watching these old NFL drafts, because you see the people that overhype these players up to a point where they're setting themselves up for failure. Like, you know, I'll never forget the year when everyone thought that Tim Tebow was going to be the next big thing, and, you know, everyone was shocked when the Broncos gave up that much draft capital to trade it to go get him in the first round. Like, the year when Johnny Manziel came into the league, everyone thought that Johnny Manziel was going to be the next big thing, and, like, they thought the Cleveland Browns had just won the jackpot by getting him because nobody else would take him. Like, everyone was hyping up him to go to Dallas, and Dallas said, yeah, we're trying to fix the team that we have right now. We don't want him there. And it's just like, there's always a fun factor to watching these drafts and watching them overhype these specific players to a T, and everyone thinking that they've got the next big thing. And most of the time, it really doesn't. I mean, we just seen in the last couple of years, the draft class of 2021 and most of 2022, in terms of the quarterbacks, have not been that strong so far. And so, like, the people that we see here coming up in this 2024 draft, like I said before, out of all those quarterbacks coming out this year, I think Drake May's probably the biggest question mark overall. He seems more like a project quarterback than a guy that's ready to take the field right away. But I just get the feeling that they're going to overhype that guy to become the next big thing. And he ends up becoming another Trey Lance or a Desmond Ridder or a Malik Willis or a Zach Wilson, where they overhype him to a point where if he's not delivering a Super Bowl to them, as soon as he gets onto the stage, as soon as he gets inside the building, they're going to toss him out almost immediately. Like, it feels like it's going to be that type of a situation. But those are just some of the draft moments in particular I wanted to bring up here. Like I said, I'll delve more into it as we get closer to the draft. Like I said, Thursday night we'll have a special NFL Draft edition of the Reviewing Network live after the draft happens. So definitely check that out. You can see it right here on this channel. So stay tuned for that coming up this Thursday. So I've wasted more of your time already. So let's go ahead and wrap the show up with some recommendations. So in terms of recommendations this week, The Beekeeper comes out this week on Blu-ray, which is funny because I just was at Walmart earlier today. I did a video over on the other channel. You can go check that out. But when I went to Walmart today, they had The Beekeeper there on Blu-ray, and it doesn't come out until Tuesday, apparently. And yet, I was still able to buy it today. So I basically got an advanced copy of The Beekeeper on Blu-ray before anybody else did. And it's a really good, fun movie. A very fun, silly, over-the-top action movie. It delivers everything it promises from the trailers, and comes out on Blu-ray this Tuesday. But if you go to your Walmart, who knows? It might actually be there now. But that comes out this week on Blu-ray. Drive-Away Dolls also comes out on Blu-ray this week. A movie I really wanted to check out when it came out in theaters a couple months ago, and it didn't. And I never got a chance to see it because it never played around here. So I'm definitely looking forward to checking that out. I did see 2 movies this week on streaming that I did want to recommend, and that's 2 of them everybody's been talking about. One of them is Late Night with the Devil, which I finally got to watch. It premiered on Shudder this week, and it's as good as everyone says it is. You have a story that incorporates elements of documentary filmmaking and found footage as it follows the events of a late-night talk show episode aired on the night of Halloween 1977, during which the host, played by David Dastmalchian from The Dark Knight and Ant-Man, attempts to boost ratings by inviting an allegedly possessed girl onto the show. And of course, chaos ensues, and it's really, really good. Like, it really does feel like you're watching something from the 1970s, and yeah, there's been some controversy about using AI generated art. However, it's only used for like 3 still images in the movie, which is really not a big deal in terms of like, it's at least it's brief little things. Like they're trying to do what Johnny Carson does during his commercials, where he has these pictures on there. It says like, "We'll be back after this," like that type of thing, and it's only 3 very shown things, and it's just like, it's really blink and you miss it type of stuff here. Like, I know we can criticize the usage of AI generated art as much as we want to, and rightfully so. It's something that is still very topical, very controversial to this day, but the way it's used in this movie, I didn't mind it so much, and it should not take away the overall enjoyment of the film itself, because the movie really is something very special that you should definitely check out. It's streaming on Shudder right now, and it's probably going to come out on Blu-ray pretty soon, which, if you do get a chance to see it, definitely check it out. But this other movie came out a couple years ago, actually, but is now getting an official release this week on Amazon Prime, and it's one of the funniest things I've seen in a long, long time. It's a movie called Hundreds of Beavers, where you have this guy named Gene Kayak, who's thrust into a bizarre winter realm, relying solely on his limited intellect to navigate the surreal environment amidst unforgiving weather and eerie beings portrayed by actors in elaborate mascot attire. Kayak devises intricate traps to earn the affection of a playful paramour. And the whole thing is this slapstick comedy that feels like something straight out of Looney Tunes, straight out of something like the Three Stooges. And, Coyote vs. Acme is the big story right now still, but if we never get to see that movie, which would suck, this is probably a great alternative to that, because this thing is so freaking funny, man. Like, it feels like a live-action Looney Tunes movie. It feels like I'm watching Kung Fu Hustle again, and, like, it's just so well done. It's a story it features a lot of zany cartoon-style gags. The movie looks really, really impressive in black and white. It's just a hilarious, hilarious film that's probably very high up there with one of my favorite movies of the year so far. It's a film that I knew going into it that not a whole lot, but I'm glad I got to see it when I did, because it's a film that definitely deserves to be seen. If you haven't seen this movie, I highly recommend checking it out. It's really, really good. You can find it on Amazon Prime Video. Hundreds of Beavers. Definitely seek it out, because it is indeed well worth a watch. It's easily one of the best movies of the year. Definitely check it out. Hundreds of Beavers. And on that note, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Reviewing Network Live. So, thank you so much for watching and listening. And if you want to hear more of these, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. Check out some of the other episodes we've done on our playlist. And thank you for watching. I really appreciate you guys checking this out. And we do this every single week. The episode's posted every Sunday night at midnight. Definitely check out more of them if you want to see more of them. And hopefully you can join us here next week for another episode. Don't forget, Thursday night we're doing our NFL Draft Special. Thursday night, 8 o'clock. Not 8 o'clock, because that's when the draft will start. It'll be after the draft, I should say that. But I'll be recording throughout the course of the draft, and then have a live episode coming up at the end, of the draft. So be on the lookout for that, and hopefully I'll see you guys there for that. So thank you so much for watching. That'll be I'll see you Thursday night for that, for the NFL draft, and then back here again next Sunday night with an all-new episode here. So thank you so much for watching and listening, and I'll see you guys next time. And until then, we are out.